Svitlana, it is nice to see you again. We just saw each other actually yesterday at the big Discount Day live stream. That was a fun show. But yeah, as I mentioned, we see each other again today and we will talk about some smart moves. What do you have on the tableau today?
Today we will, as you can see, look at an opening, and it will be part 2 of the King's Indian.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Because it is a very big opening, and it is impossible to learn it in just one lesson.
Yeah.
It's not even possible to learn it in two, but that will cover more of the different grounds. Because in the first part we looked at the main variation and the very main plans in the closed center. But today we'll look at more everything surrounding it and some more variations of the King's Indian.
Nice. So, by the way, if you have found us by searching for the King's Indian on YouTube, underneath this YouTube video, you can see all the data and stats in the description, meaning we can take a look at some games, which we're going to look at right now, on the ChessBase news site. You can download it as a PGN, you can play with us, take it as a training and learn something new. I have to say, for some reason, people didn't look at the King's Indian video that much the last time. So I hope you can power it up a little bit today, dear viewers, and be a bit more energetic about the King's Indian. Because, yeah, I thought about it. It was a bit boring, but then Svitlana actually convinced me that it is super aggressive and attacking if you play it the correct way, how it is intended. Okay, that was my speech. Now continue, please.
Yeah, sure. So these are all of the beginning moves, and all the main lines go with this e4 move.
Yeah.
So this is where white can go differently. So you could play it less aggressively and play things like e3, maybe not put the pawn here right away, but basically that doesn't really change black's plans as much, and you would just keep doing the same thing. So if you're just starting to play the King's Indian and white does something weird like b3 or a3, random moves like or not as aggressive moves such as e3, then the plans don't change, and you still go for your regular d6 and e5 and castles, and that's how you would play it. So e4 is almost always going to be seen because people like taking the center when they see it. d6, and now is the moment where white chooses their variation. So last time we looked at knight f3 and bishop e2, which is the main line, the one that gets played very often, but there are a few other important ones. There is so one of them, which you would probably like to play as white, is the 4 pawns. It's the most attacking one, the most aggressive one.
100%. I would actually go for the 5 or even the 6 pawn attack.
Yeah, you have 8, so there's a lot of room for improvement. Yeah. So the 4 pawns is one of those aggressive systems that just takes over the entire center, and it can look a bit intimidating to play it with the black side.
True.
But I like the way that black can play this and start to take over the center with the c5 move. So instead of going for a typical e5 plans, since there's now 3 defenders on that square, it wouldn't really make sense to play it, and now this pawn sacrifice is not going to be as efficient. So instead of that, we still have to hit the center, that is for sure, but it will be done with the c5 move, which is the other common way of doing it in the King's Indian, and this is how you normally would do it. Then the capture is fine. Usually the person who just took the center is not going to give it away like that, and they're going to play d5. What do you think the rest of the plan would be that is combined with c5?
In this particular position now, you mean? So I guess I would try to leave the e7 pawn a bit longer, because maybe it needs to be there to defend d6, because there can be e5 looks very tempting for white. I guess the knight goes to d7 and b6 and the bishop to g4 maybe.
Okay, well, you're picking to develop the pieces for now.
Yeah.
And play this. I think there would be nothing wrong, particularly with moves like bishop g4, or with just developing moves like bringing the knight out to d7 or to a6. But the main plan is actually what you said to not do. It is to move the e7 pawn right away, and we're moving it to e6.
Okay.
The reason for that is that we're still a bit cramped, so we did give away the center in the first few moves, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we try to hit that center and to open up at least a bit of space. So this is going to be mainly for our rook. So now, once we hit the center with e6, usually people will not take; they will just continue their development like this. And then we play rook e8, and we keep going. This is looking like...
Didn't expect that. Yeah, but it looks... it makes sense. The
Right.
position looks good, yeah.
Maybe you were maybe concerned about capturing?
I think yes, exactly. But I was also... Yeah, but it doesn't make a difference. I thought, like, I didn't even see e6. I thought of e5 entirely only. So yeah, but when there's the capture and then there is like something like e5, can I like...
There's both captures that can be played. This is kind of a matter of taste. So you could take with the bishop to keep this file open and to keep this bishop developed, all of that. But then the d6 pawn is risking to be a bigger weakness. There's also taking like this, in which case you have the f file now open, and instead you're going to go for slightly different plans. Maybe you're thinking about playing d5 somewhere, but then your bishop is not as developed. So here, this is a choice. It's just a matter of taste. I've played both, and both of them can be learned, and it's just whichever pawn structure you feel like you like better. But this is not exactly a huge concern, because like I said, most people like to keep their center intact and just keep developing their pieces, after which they will take with this c pawn and play rook e8. Now we're attacking here. Of course, e5 has been concerning you for a while, yeah, so right now we're just basically in the main line of these 4 pawns.
Yeah, so I mean, this position, I would just like, it looks so strong for white. They have pushed forward the pawns, but yeah, of course, there's a lot of tricks and ideas for black, which I don't see at the very moment.
Well, one of them, which is the e5 pawn, is not going to survive for very long, because it's attacked 3 times already and only defended once. So usually these positions are played more dynamically, and white will end up giving up that pawn for quicker development and for this for the central. At least they have the d5 pawn.
Yeah.
So this is one of the popular lines. I kind of like it for black, but it's both sides have ideas, and I would understand if someone who likes the 4 pawns would not enjoy such a cramped up position. But it doesn't stay like this forever. So I don't know if white doesn't do that and just defends the pawn and tries to keep the center. Then we start to play on the wing. We start to expand with b5, and we can play c4 to open up this diagonal. And there's now a lot of tactics. There can be knight g4 tricks, and I like these positions for black. But but you have to play accurately in the first few moves to not let the central advantage just go away to white without a fight.
Yes, okay.
So this was the 4 pawns variation briefly, and there's a few more. There are some lines that go with this h3 sneaky move. It can happen on this turn or on the next one, but it's still going to transpose to the same thing. And I think this is called we could call it the Makogonov variation. And it's one of those ones that I think you would see more at higher level, because people like kind of start to look at the sidelines more and try to make them work, look at it with the engine for a while. And this is how it became popular. So this one, what do you think the idea of the sneaky h3 move is?
Well, first of all, it stops g4, bishop g4, which is probably always quite a good, and knight g4 if there were to be some variation. But of course, I guess the main reason is to push g4 yourself and build up a little bit of an attack.
Right. So it's mostly defending against knight to g4 and not bishop. The bishop normally in the King's Indian, remember, we don't actually want to trade this bishop.
Yes.
Because of the future attacking prospect. So we don't really play bishop g4 and take on f3 ever in the King's Indian. But knight g4 is certainly a move after bishop e3, because that's where the bishop can and wants to go. And of course, the main plan is to just play g4 ourselves. So when this happens, whenever one of the sidelines happens, you can kind of think about your two breakthrough options, which are e5 and c5. And sometimes one is way better than the other. Sometimes they're a bit equivalent. But in most cases, the main plan will be e5, because that's the main that's the main thing we do in this pawn structure. And here you can play both, and you can kind of play this like a 4 pawns, for example. It will be slightly different, but you can try to play it this way. But I like playing it with e5 and then continuing similar plans. But the reason why this variation is kind of important is that it's not going to be like these regular closed pawns. Like it's not going to be like the main line, which it might look like it because of the pawn chain. But the reason why it's not is because white isn't necessarily going to castle short. Is they've kind of left the option of castling long. So that is also something to be careful about, because if white castles long, then the f5 plan, we might have to reconsider it, or we might have to time it differently, and it will not stay the main plan for a while. So this is another way to play it for white. White can certainly go for these g4 maneuvers, in which case we can try giving up on f5. Maybe we can time it correctly and still do it eventually, but we're going to try to play in the center mostly. We can think about c6, which is also common, and developing like that. So about these kind of sidelines of the King's Indian, do you have any questions?
Yes. I'm because of this stream we had yesterday, a lot of people were presenting their own Fritz trainer, and in the variations where there is a fianchetto on the G file, it often occurred, like Grünfeld Indisch or even the hippopotamus, it often occurred that white is very modernly playing h4, like it happens all the time. Now, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about the move h4 for white? Because it's actually a move which is even the second, third, or fourth move to make a sign.
Yeah. So I don't know about the line h4 right away, but there is one that starts with the bishop, like this. Oh, this one does exist, and it's pretty interesting. I think when I used to play the King's Indian all the time, and that was a period for me too. When I used to play it very, very often, I would sometimes get thrown off every once in a while into some sideline like this, like h4 or g4, that type of thing, which is very scary because you can see clearly that the opponent's intention is just to checkmate you right away. Yeah. And even though King's Indian was my main opening, I kind of didn't know these like subtlety sidelines. And these do look scary. So on these h4 moves, there's usually two ways to react. And this is not just for the King's Indian. This is for, like you said, any opening that is with a fianchetto like this with g6. And there's many. There's the modern. There's there's the Pirk, right?
Loads of Indian defenses
Yeah,
and yeah,
a lot
Perk,
of
you're
a lot
right,
of
yeah.
these defenses start with g6, and h4 move is very common. So the two reactions that you can normally have to this move are either h5 or h6.
Nice, yeah. That's
So
exactly that goes hand in hand of what the grandmasters yesterday mentioned too, yeah.
yeah, and which one is right will depend on the other piece placements.
Mm-hmm.
So h5 is usually the more committal one because you're going to give up this g5 square forever, which I think is kind of White's point as well, is that they provoked you to play h5, which you normally wouldn't play in such a position. This is not to say that h5 will lose or something like that, but it does give White a comfortable place for the bishop. Now it will never leave. Now f5 is kind of hard for you to play. So I wouldn't really react with h5, but it's one of the ways if you just want to stop the attack and not have it be a concern for now. h6 is more of a flexible one. Either play it right away or not right away, is because you want to react to h5 by playing g5 and close it up this way. So it's a choosing between those two, and you have to consider the benefits and the drawbacks of each. So you can think about either playing h5 or h6 in these positions, or just leaving it as it is, which probably is what I would prefer. And you can keep going your own way and start hitting the center, because White doesn't yet have enough pieces to attack you. And we can play it like this. The way that the idea that I showed in the 4 pawns, we can have a very similar plan. For example, play this and leave this attack up to White to continue while you switch over to the center while his king is still in the center.
Okay, interesting.
So this is probably the way that I would recommend playing it, because it's more attacking and it's less just going with whatever the opponent chose.
Ah, that's a very good point. Yeah, didn't consider it from that perspective, of course. Yeah, the opponent dictates like, oh, well, you have to play h6 or h5, but you can also go like, oh, wow, okay. Not necessary. Interesting. Yeah, thanks. That was my question. Besides that, everything is very clear. Yeah.
So the game that I wanted to show today happens in also one of the very popular lines against the King's Indian, which starts with f3. Have you seen this one before?
I think it is called, yes, I have seen it a couple of times actually. A Samisch variation or something.
Yeah.
I've seen it, and I don't know where or what. Maybe it was on the stream, but I've seen this, very recently. It's an interesting idea. Or did we talk about it the last time? No, we didn't.
No, we didn't look at this one in particular. We looked at the main lines. So this one is slightly different. Do you have you heard of what White tries to do in this one?
No, not really. So I just know about this move. Please don't step on the keyboard, my friend.
Oh, he's so cute.
Yeah, just sit down here. Is it also g4 and h4? No, it cannot be.
So this one is a bit more attacking than the other one, because White can try to castle long here. They can play bishop e3, queen d2, and now they have an option of castling long and just launching an attack with their pawns. This is also just a solid move in the center because now it's defending e4, which is often the problematic pawn. And it's obviously a move that also prepares g4. So this, in my opinion, is one of the more dangerous setups for the King's Indian players, not because it's like an amazing line or something, but because it kind of goes against what the King's Indian players like to do. It's a bit slower. It's not going to be as it's not going to be the same plans as usual, where we are going to attack the king and they're going to attack on the side for some positional benefits. So this one kind of goes against these, which is why many King's Indian players find it annoying to play against.
Okay.
But we're going to look at a game that will show it well. It's a game between Wang Yue and Cheparinov, who Cheparinov is a very good attacking player.
He had 2,700 at one point. He's one of those rare players who reached it once.
That's...
And Wang Yue has 2,700 since a long time, I think. So.
Yeah. So this is one of the important variations to also know in the King's Indian, because it's the different plans as opposed to the main line. So in the Samisch, do you think we're going to so you already know we have the two plans. Do you think we're going to go for the E5 plans or the C5 plans?
Well, what a good question. Well, after the bishop going to E3, looks a bit more less challenging if we play E5 in this case.
Well, the real answer is we can do both.
Oh, really?
We can play both C5 and E5,
so
and they're both theory.
We're not losing a pawn on C5 if they take?
So when these positions happen with the pawn taking, you can take it back. You can also try to play it with not exactly here because the bishop is here. If they start with a different move order, then we can play Queen A5.
Yeah.
But this is a very okay endgame. It's totally what?
Mouse slip.
Yeah, Queen D7 would be nice. But so this, you're right, I should mention this endgame. This is an equal endgame. And it is one of those positional pawn sacrifices that turns out to be completely fine for black. It might not be to, the regular attacking King's Indian players liking, but this is the gamble that you take by playing C5. Because C5 leads to different positions. White is not necessarily going to take. I'll tell you that. Usually you also have to think from White's player perspective why he picked this type of line is he probably doesn't want to go into an endgame that quickly. If he wanted to go into an endgame, he would play one of the lines where they take on E5. But this is an equal endgame for the reason that this bishop is our good compensation for that lost pawn, and we have an active knight that can go to all of these places, and we will soon have a well-developed bishop.
Okay.
So it's more these reasons. So I don't really like the possibility of having this, even if C5 does exist. Like I said, it's not really to my liking to play these positions, so I'm going to show the game with E5.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah. Still, White can take and go for this, but this is not the same, and it's not at all what you would normally do with White if you want an endgame like that. The bishop will have to be here. The knight ideas to come here will have to happen. The pawn on F3 is blocking the knight now. So this is not a good version of that endgame. We're simply going to put our knight to D4 and have a really nice position there.
Yeah.
So this is not a concern. So most people won't even do this, and they will play D5. So, here, now there's a few ways. To play, and Cheparinov went for knight H5. The knight from H5 is coming to F4, and also freeing up the way for F5. So it's always important to be careful with these F5 moves in these, for example, the Samisch, because in the Samisch, you know that the opponent might not castle short and instead castle long. So your whole plan with closing the center here and then playing G5 and G4 and opening it up on the wing, starting to attack the king, doesn't work anymore. So the reason why we still play F5 is because it's actually a structurally good move for us, and we are going to be able to maybe close the side of the board with f4, because now we want it closed, and we're going to switch instead on the other side, depending on where the king castles. So what do you think is the main plan that we pursue after white castles long?
A5. No, but I think it would be at one point it would be good to open the diagonal for the bishop on g7, maybe, like somehow, don't know how yet. Maybe, I guess maybe opening up the game would be a good idea. So taking the pawn is a bit helpful. I don't like f4 that much because bishop goes back to f2, and then we are, well, we can. So what to do here? There's so many plan ideas. The white pawn structure is quite good against the queen side pawn structure from black. So
yeah, you mentioned a few things there. Did you want to take this pawn?
I think that would be, yeah, one of the main ideas is to open it up, taking the pawn. Yes.
So whenever you take this pawn, usually I don't like doing this for black because the knight comes here and it's on a very strong outpost, and there is no way to kick it out anymore. It can go to g5, which is a fairly dangerous square, and because from g5 it can go to e6, all of that, attack the king. And we will never be able to kick this knight out. Now, we didn't also do something particularly useful, so it's not like our rook is attacking the king here. It's not really to our benefit to do this normally.
Yeah.
So only if white couldn't recapture with a knight or something, and we were opening up later with our own e4, then yes. But we're not doing that, and now this will never happen, and this bishop will just always stay like that. So opening up the bishop, I would really love to do that, but it's not always possible. Sometimes the bishop just stays a defensive piece and just waits its turn to later shine whenever some diagonal opens up. But one of the ways to do that, not right away here, not exactly in this variation, but it can sometimes happen in the Samisch, where we would play this.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought about this too.
So not here, because like just on first glance you can just play g3 and have to go back. But if ever that's not the case, maybe not castled yet, then these are always good. If we can ever get this is amazing, and I would sacrifice a pawn for that any day, maybe even two, to just have this bishop opened up, to have it on such a strong diagonal, and especially get rid of white's bishop.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. If there's ever a chance to do that, that's good. Sometimes people do it on d4. So they sacrifice earlier on, of course, we have to play knight c6 and then play e5.
Okay.
So sometimes people do this on d4, where they I can even show where.
Yeah, please.
Basically here. Okay, maybe start with queen here, and then we'll wait. a6 is technically the line. So for example, we just play regular moves. We try to go for b5, and now going here. So sometimes this bishop diagonal is so strong that we're actually even willing to give up our pawn for opening up this bishop.
Yeah.
Right now it can't even be taken. Can you see why it can't be taken?
Yeah, it's taking on e4.
Exactly. Knight e4, and if the queen moves, then we pin it to the king. So that's a nice idea. I really like it. I've done it many times. Of course, they don't have to take, and they can simply move the knight and then take the pawn with the knight. So you do have to be prepared to give away that pawn at some point. But this bishop diagonal can be worth it. I think it's worth it, and I've liked playing it. And we can open up the center with a lot of moves, maybe even like this. And yeah, I've played this type of position sometimes, and I think giving up that pawn, it doesn't even feel like you did it, because your bishop is just so strong, bishop pair, and white is lacking in development.
And so even I'm looking at some tactics with rook e8.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, true. Right now, I would be a bit concerned about this.
Oh, true.
But
okay, didn't see
but
that.
True. Yeah. So that's just another way to play it. The plan is still going to be with the e5, But you can start with knight c6. There's certain lines have their own subtleties. But as I said, I mostly teach about the ideas, especially at the beginning part of the opening. Then I recommend whoever is like the student that is trying to play a new opening. First, I teach them main ideas. Then I tell them to play it. And if they have problems in certain lines, like they can say, I keep losing in the 4 pawns. Then that's when you actually look into the theory behind these 4 pawns and figure out what you're doing wrong and how you can improve. So that is how I would learn pretty much any opening. So we were talking about which plans to pursue. And here the only plan that I see would be to open up the queen side with a6 and b5.
Okay.
And this is very common in this pawn structure, in the Samisch pawn structure, even to sacrifice a pawn there, just to open up that A and B file, because that's where our king and that's where our target is now.
Good, okay.
So the game continued with these few moves that I showed on the board. The knight came to its regular spot on c5. And when do you think would be the right moment to play b5? Do you think we're ready, or do we want to prepare it more?
Well, we're not ready yet, in my opinion. I often see the move. I think it's also a Sicilian move which happens every now and then. Is the rook to b8 to give it even some extra power.
Yeah, rook b8 sometimes happens in these structures, and it can be a good way to prepare b5. But I expected you to say that you're always ready. Which would be fine. And this is actually what he played in the game. He still played b5.
Okay.
He went for it right away. Like I said, the pawn isn't that big of a deal if we open up all of these.
Okay, yeah, it looks very good.
And the b file.
It looks very good, to be honest.
So yeah, this is how the game continued. The bishop got developed. So of course the pawn is on white's side, but the a file, the b file opened. We got extra development with our bishop. So how do you think we bring the rest of the pieces into the attack? What else should join?
So queen to d7 and rook to b8 sounds like a plan.
That's one of the options.
And
that's good.
Once again, the trick which you were showing earlier is the knight going to f4.
Yeah, we can certainly think about that, and where it later can join to d3, which is now one of the squares that we're more in control of. The first step is to bring a piece onto the b file, which can be the rook, and it can also be the queen, which is what he did, and he wants to double with both of them eventually. Knight went to e2, queen b4. This is how the game continued. And already it looks like the attack is about to start, and I like this position
already. Yeah,
I like this position for black. Although, I mean, if we ask the computer, if you ask the computer about any King's Indian position, they're gonna say that white has the slight advantage. In some lines, it's even like it used to say a giant advantage, especially earlier computers, because the computer really values space, and it's quite a different psychology than as a human, because the computer knows he's not going to blunder anything, and he can evaluate it kind of without all of these extra factors. But having such a large space sometimes comes with the cost that we as black are going to attack it, and there's going to be a lot of tactics to calculate, and of course no one plays perfectly, and it's not later the computers went a bit less and less, and now it's just like the plus equal advantage, which is usually expected in most positions as black anyway. Right? If white plays the main line, it's going to be in most cases. So whose position do you prefer? Do you side with the computer that you like your extra pawn and you give white a tiny edge, or do you like black for the attack?
Well, I think that was a rhetorical question, wasn't it? Of course, yes. The attack is the beauty for me. I still understand why there's enough people who might think, and they might be right even, that this pawn, which is more should actually decide the game if you defend correctly and well.
Yeah,
but
I don't
the
think it would
attack is
decide the
great.
game necessarily. Like I said, it's just like a tiny advantage, tiny edge,
Yeah.
just because that pawn exists. But for sure, whoever plays better will actually end up with the advantage. So if it's white who deflected all the attack and started their own, it will be white.
Okay.
But if it's if black attacks better and doesn't let white do his own ideas, then he will be the one taking over the initiative. So I also prefer black, and I think they have really easy and clear play on the queen side. So from the practical point of view, I would definitely always prefer black. And it is very difficult to stop this growing attack and all of both rooks on open files. And white just created an additional weakness with a3, so we might focus on this pawn later on. And they retracted with queen a5. Now in the game, white played knight c1. But I want to ask you, what would you do if white captured? How would you really react to this pawn capture and to this center opening up?
There's two options. Either I give up now because this is too much, but I would just play the f rook to b8.
That's never an option, but rook f to b8 is exactly right. Rook f to b8 is exactly right. And there's also another option. So there's two good moves.
Oh.
Neither of them involve recapturing. Recapturing is not good, and it's because of tactics that start to work out in white's favor. They now have d6 type of moves, and it's really not looking that great after something like this. So a pawn is attacked, maybe not even d6 right away. We can play d6 a move later, but this is not good at all because of this idea that now there's rook h7 going to be threatened all the time. This bishop is attacking all the time, and g4 will be a problem. So this, I think, was just winning for white.
One wrong decision and it can mess everything up.
Yeah, but this one is an important decision because you change the pawn structure completely. What you said with rook f to b8 is perfect. This is exactly what the main move would be. And then you take over the initiative again. And there's also a more complicated way, but e4.
Thought about this too, but it looked too brutal.
It looked like it's too much.
Yeah.
True. But it does work. Maybe you...
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, there's just so many things, and
well, now you can take on b2, right? Already.
Well,
the
queen,
you can't. Yeah,
first, something needs to be done about the queen.
But
it can be just this. We're distracting, and then we're going to think about bishop here. We can think about rook coming here. I like rook here better, and
yes,
I mean, I think
a bit more.
Yeah, but e4 is just very tactical, and there's a lot of things going on. So I like your rook f to b8 way better. And if they capture, then we have this idea of taking on a3, and I mean, black is just winning now. So it's also one wrong decision for white that can lead to mate already. But this is any position with two kings being castled on the opposite side.
Yeah.
In the game, we can go through the next little bit where they are just maneuvering their pieces, bringing them more to the attack, doubling up on the b file. All of these happened. All of these moves are logical. And here white makes the first mistake in their defense, and they play one slow move and play knight to c1. How do you think you would play next, and what is our attack missing?
That's some good question. By the way, for you at home, if you also want to, I mean, it's a training, as we said already, so you can always stop the video and think for yourself. Please do it. Take this chance to do some training research here. There must be some nice tactic. I can smell it. But what can it be?
Not exactly a tactic yet, but you're preparing for a tactic.
Yeah, there is not a real tactic yet. So what is it just the move c4, which is like taking away the spaces for?
The move is c4, but I'm surprised you you didn't say the idea that comes after it, because the way I would find c4 is by wanting to do something else first. But you found it just by intuition, which is still good.
Okay.
But it's also about the next move. So okay, c4 is great. C4 is an amazing move, and it's the next move that kind of proves its purpose.
Is that so? What could it be? What could it be?
Which piece do you think you'd like to improve?
Well, the knight, of course, and the bishop. Now that's 2 pieces, right? So I don't know how to improve the bishop here. Okay, yes, now I found it. Thank you. Those hints, it's like, I mean, you almost giving me the solution, and then I'm still surprised that I still cannot find it. So it's bishop f8, of course, which is a beautiful attacking move. Yeah, so this is why c4 was so good before, because it does take away all the squares and it opens up the bishop to join the attack. And that's how the attack grows more and more tactical ideas start to appear. And this is what sometimes happens to this bishop. It's first closed with the whole pawn chain with d6 and e5, and then it can join the attack really nicely. Sometimes on f8, sometimes it can join from h6. So in this case, it starts attacking one of white's weaknesses on a3. Good, yes. This looks quite crushing.
So it's time for the tactic.
Yes, finally. Okay. So that doesn't work. I think if I play the knight to d3, that will take away enough defenders for crushing on a3 or something similar, or just playing b4. So
yeah, knight to d3, I wouldn't mind. I think it would be okay. I don't know why the computer loves
this is like
knight h3
really
so much.
odd.
Where is the knight going?
I have to give you Komodo 3 soon. Please remind me. I had so much fun yesterday with that. Anyway.
But it's not knight d3. It's not what happened in the game.
Knight d3. Good. Okay. So what about? Okay. I found it now. I think. Yeah. We just take on a3 with the bishop.
We just take on a3. That's right.
And then we take with the rook.
Yes.
And now the only problem is rook a8, I believe.
Rook a8 is met with knight a4, unfortunately, and the attack slows down.
Not good. So I didn't find it yet. Give me a split second, please. Oh yeah, okay. Why didn't I see that? Queen to b4 check. Yeah,
good. Queen b4 and then rook a8.
Yes.
Is completely different story, because knight a4 can be taken. So this is how the game continued, and at first I thought that I would just end it pretty much somewhere here.
Yeah, should be.
And it should be over. But it actually was not over for a bit. We're not going to look at the whole thing, but you'll see why. I'll show a bit of the end. So here they didn't even take the knight right away, because there's nothing that can be done. So attacking the rook first to just get even more material. White is helpless on the b and the a file, which, by the way, happened because we did that sacrifice with b5 and opened up both the files. So they had to give up a rook in the process, which is fine, because we also gave up a bishop and a rook, by the way. So we gave up a lot of stuff. And we gained back the material. So technically, we're only up a pawn, which is already a nice outcome of the attack. But we're up a pawn. We lost the knight. So it's still not that close to being done.
You cannot play queen b2 here because of the check on d1. I just saw that. I just wanted to mention.
Right. So this pawn is one of the main reasons why this attack is still ongoing, and why this is a very good position for black. Not just very good. I mean, I think it's winning. Yeah. So the reason what I wanted to show last is that this pawn never went anywhere. And in this moment, I was just surprised when I was fast forwarding the game because I thought it was just over. But what is the black's next move, do you think?
Okay. So, in mind comes queen takes h2, but is there enough? Oh, there is a checkmate even threatening. So,
Queen h2, I think.
Is it an under promotion?
It is an under promotion.
Wow. Nice one. That's the knight.
It's the knight, yeah. So the queen would not work the same way because of perpetual check.
Yes.
So no matter where the king goes, the queen can chase it around, and there's no way to escape from it. Not queen h4, but queen g5. And there's no escape from this, and this would be a draw. So instead of the queen, the knight gets taken, and I was very surprised to see that because it's not often you see this in actual classical games, and this is not when it doesn't matter either, right? Because both sides still have material there, so you can't really afford to do this just because you have like 2 queens extra already. So you just
some fun.
want to have fun. It's really it really isn't this case, and it's just because you want an extra knight and you're going to win this with 2 pawns up, which I thought was a nice finish to the game. Maybe not what I expected. I wanted a checkmate. I wanted to show the checkmate in the King's Indian, but no, instead we got instead he won with 2 extra pawns and a queen and knight endgame, which is also as easily winning.
Crazy.
But it was a nice under promotion because it's not like he just did it because the piece gets taken. Often people do this when the piece will get taken anyway, so they just promote it to anything just because it's nice and satisfying. But here the knight actually got used, so it's the game ended later with the 2 pawns up.
Excellent. That is really, really cool.
That is how you can play against the Samisch variation, which is one of the important variations to know in the King's Indian. So is there anything else in the King's Indian that you still have questions about? I feel like we covered pretty much most of the main structures. Really?
I think you should make a Fritz trainer or something like this soon. But that's just a wish. I think you should make a Fritz trainer about everything, but that's just a personal opinion. No, this is really cool. You were explaining all the plans, the basic ideas, and the concept, which is great because, this is something I've also been missing. It's not only like the sterile theory, it is more about the plans. So even if there are certain moves where you don't know what to do with the right plan, with the right strategy about the opening itself, you can find the right moves for it. And you've shown this very nicely.
That's the way I've learned every opening is I first know the ideas, then I play it, and then only comes the theory portion, because in some openings you can't avoid theory, and some you can. But it's always for people who don't like to learn theory, who don't really enjoy sitting and memorizing lines. I think this is a good opening because it's very attacking. It's always something new, and sure, the theory part can come in later once you've played it a lot and once you want to get deeper into the lines. But just by knowing these main ideas, you should be able to get some nice attacking positions, especially in the main lines, because it's always the same plans there. And it can be a good addition to the repertoire for people who like to attack.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your smart moves, Svitlana. I hope you at home enjoyed this too, and we see each other next week already. I say bye-bye. Till then.